Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Master as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode 524, where only your best friends try to kill you. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How are you
How
guys
are you
doing?
guys?
Stereo. I'm well.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
All right, well, let's move on to... No. Well, it's been a few weeks since we recorded. You guys have a nice Independence Day?
It was pretty good.
What'd you do? Did you do anything? Fire off some fireworks? Barbecue?
No. We my dad made pulled pork, which he had never done before, which was delicious, and he did a really good job with it. But we went over there for dinner. Gemma decided on the 4th that she likes fireworks and wanted to set some off, and wanted to buy big fireworks. Sarah convinced her not to, just in the fact of last year she didn't like them at all. So we bought some little ones and set them off, and still have more left over that we didn't set off, just because by the time we got back home and it was dark enough too, Gemma was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. Ironically, we could have stayed up and done them with Liam, because he's been up a lot lately.
We went over to my folks. I was actually off for on the 4th for once in a long time. I guess I've been off the last 2 years because they fell on a weekend, but this is the first time it fell during the week that I've been off for the actual holidays. So we took advantage and went over to my parents and had a cookout, played some family games, and then did some fireworks and right in the street out in front of their house. That's pretty much it.
Nice.
We had a pretty low-key day, very similar, just kind of hung out and bought about, $25 worth of things that go bang, and then went up to the mound and watched everybody else shoot off their stuff and came home, called it a night.
Did you guys watch anything recently? I think we all decided we're all caught up on Obi-Wan, right?
Yes. What do you guys think of the end?
The end is really good. It's lots of fan service, but really intense. It's kind of everything I wanted out of the series as a whole. The series as a whole for me was a bit up and down. I kind of felt like it had strengths and it had weaknesses. Overall, I enjoyed it. And it was a good series, but there were times that I kind of felt like I wanted Obi-Wan to come around sooner. I wanted him to be a little wiser than he acted. It sort of works better now in hindsight that it doesn't, because I think this is what gives us the wizened Obi-Wan from A New Hope. I think it's this instance, this situation, that gave him the wise, the enwizened version that we have. And I really super liked the ending that I think certain actor lied to me. So I was really grateful that that certain actor lied to me, because that was a very pleasant surprise.
That was a nice surprise.
Which actor?
The surprise cameo.
The surprise cameo at the end.
Oh, somehow Palpatine returned? Yeah, that was a big surprise.
Returned? He was in it.
He was.
Yeah, he did return in that. I mean, that's only half a joke.
And looked better than he did in Revenge of the Sith.
That is I agree. I very much feel like this is not the Obi-Wan series I wanted, but it's very much the Obi-Wan series I think we needed, if that weirdly makes sense. And there were so many things that were done differently. I was not expecting an Obi-Wan with PTSD. I was not expecting an Obi-Wan who was already so unplugged and distant and having to kind of relearn who he is. I wanted him to be, cocky, self-assured, Sith Lords are our speciality, taking out General Grievous, Obi-Wan. That's who I wanted. And it takes him a while to get into that groove. But when you look at the events of the series as a whole and what has come before and how tormented and tortured he is over the things that have happened and where he winds up, it totally fits. It's a beautiful arc. And I think the only misstep, quite honestly, is the fact that it's a series. I think somebody else mentioned this, that if you were to sit down and just mainline this now that it's out as all 6 parts in one go, as a 6-hour movie, I think it would flow a lot better. I think the halt and start and stop of each week as an episode comes and the kind of cliffhanger notion of it, I think that kind of harmed the flow a little bit. And I think if you were to sit down and just ingest it all at once, it would flow a lot better for the story that they're telling.
Yeah.
And
well, it was originally concepted as a movie.
Yeah.
And the original screenwriter got quite a bit of writing credits for the series itself, both in its creation and there was a couple episodes where he just pretty much got full credit for writing it. They took a lot of that out of it and then added more to it.
Well, I read that the stuff that's in there would have resolved differently, but you're right. There was 2 that were heavily influenced, but that overall the story changed considerably from what the film would have been. But you're right. There are 2 in there that was a lot of the meat of the original film treatment.
Yeah, so that's probably why it does have that feel of it could have been sat down as one digestible chunk.
I can see that.
I honestly can't wait to sit down and do it as one, just to kind of relive it and see how much that does change the flavor of it.
Yeah.
But no,
John, you need to read
really
the Legends book Kenobi, because it's very much in line with this, except it stays on Tatooine the whole time. So having read that book, this is what I expected from Obi-Wan Kenobi series, except for where the actual adventure goes as far as the character is. It's kind of was step in line what I expected from the series. So I was happy with it the whole time, pretty much.
Had you guys seen the comparisons for episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, mirroring each of the different first 6 films in the series? Obi-Wan, the episode 1 mirrors Phantom Menace because it takes place on Tatooine. It's parallels of the chosen one growing up in seclusion on Tatooine, which is Luke growing up in seclusion with his folks. Amidala, growing up on a different home world. And then comparing to Leia. 2 mirrors Attack of the Clones because they end up going to that planet that has kind of the inner city, and there's the espionage and they're
being chased by bounty
hunters.
hunters.
Exactly. Even down to the fact that somebody tries to sell Obi-Wan the sticks. What do they call them?
Death sticks.
Death sticks. Yeah. I think she's selling spice, but. Oh, and did you know that gal is Ian McGregor's actual daughter?
I knew she was in there somewhere.
Yeah, she's the one that tries to sell him the thing. Anyway, then episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, especially with the first fight between Obi-Wan and Vader and the fire. It's kind of the reverse where Obi-Wan's the one that's pulled into the fire. 4 is mirrors a New Hope. I can't remember what they said was a lot of the parallels to that. And then 5 and 6 mirror from. Oh God, I don't remember how 5 went.
Well, 5 would be The Empire Strikes Back, which is
the
assault on the base.
Oh, right, yeah, exactly. The assault on the base was the mirror there, and then of course the last one being the final battle and the almost redemption. It felt like we're going there, but it, obviously couldn't go there. So.
That's kind of cool. I hadn't seen that.
I mean, they're not direct parallels of each other, but there are a lot of parallels within them. So I can't remember what 4 they said paralleled. Although it takes place. Oh, I know why. It's because they have to go in there and rescue Leia, And that's what happens in A New Hope, is they have to go in
yes.
there and rescue Leia from the Imperial stronghold.
Huh.
It's a little easier getting out this time.
Yeah. Well, do the Muppet walk. Yep, and then we watched all of Stranger Things. We're all caught up on that. We mainlined that. My family's been really into that, so we mainlined all 6.5 episodes, or not episodes, 6.5 hours. Actually, it was closer to 6 hours. No, that's not true. 2.5 and 1:45. Yeah, almost 6 hours, 5 something. And then, which we quite enjoyed that. I'm not going to spoil that because I know you guys are remarkably behind me. I was surprised to find out. And then I'm all caught up on Ms. Marvel. And I thought tonight's episode, although quite short, was very, very good. It feels like a bit of a rush to the end, especially since we only have one more episode next week. But we'll see where it goes.
I'm thoroughly enjoying Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, me too.
I'm very disappointed I'm so far behind. Because I really liked the first episode. It's just getting the time to sit down and watch it.
I'm really excited to see Thor: Love and Thunder this weekend, too.
Yes, me too.
Did you hear? Apparently, Taika Waititi was chatting with Natalie Portman at one of the many press junkets. And he asked her, he said kind of offhandedly, so I'm working on this Star Wars movie, and would you be interested in being in it? And she went, what? And he was
have you ever wanted to be in a Star Wars movie?
Have you ever wanted to be in a Star Wars movie? She's like, I was in Star Wars. I mean, I know there's people out there that like to pretend the prequels don't exist, but come on.
Did you guys watch anything else? Catch up on any films?
Yes, and now for the life of me, I can't remember what it was, so it must not have been very good.
Oh, this has probably been since we recorded. I finally watched The Batman. And I was remarkably impressed, although I went into it with a bar set amazingly low. But I was very pleased. The story is very well told. It's very captivating, and I did not hate Robert Pattinson as the Batman. I hated him as Bruce Wayne, but I didn't hate him as Batman. So
yeah, I wasn't impressed with his Bruce Wayne either. His Bruce Wayne was just kind of there, just kind of okay. But Batman was
a little too moody and brooding, I thought. But
I mean, it was an interesting take for it.
Yeah,
everybody else
I commend him for better,
good.
I commend him for taking a different approach, I suppose, with Bruce Wayne than we've had.
Yeah, okay, there it was. We went and saw the Minions: The Rise of Gru, and it's cute.
Oh.
It's probably the weakest of the whole Minion Gru Despicable Saga thing. But mainly because once again I feel like they showed way too much in all of the different previews. I really felt like I'd seen the whole movie by the time the 19th trailer rolled around.
They seem to do that with some of those animated films. Yeah, that's true.
But there's still a few good jokes that were left hidden. And then for our Friday night Friends movie, we watched Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe.
Oh, I forgot that was a movie. Yeah, I forgot that was a movie.
Well, it's weird that, okay, so there's this announcement and then a trailer, and it's like, whoa, what do you mean? Oh, you're making a new Beavis? No, you made a new Beavis and Butthead.
It just kind of snuck up.
Wait, it's this week?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, how did that happen? Yeah, there was zero hype for it. It just kind of was like, ta-da, we did a thing. And I'm kind of ashamed to say that, 30 years later, I still giggle. It's dumb. God, are these guys dumb? But, yeah. Now, there's a joke. Here's the benefit to this. Right at the beginning of the movie, like the best joke in the movie is literally the first 5 minutes. So you can watch that and call it good.
And then turn it off.
You can turn it off and stop at that point. If you continue, then you're in for more of the same kind of, you have to enjoy Beavis and Butthead in order to sit through the rest of it. It's not as good as Beavis and Butthead Do America.
I'll tell you, I used to love Beavis and Butthead back in the day, and I even enjoyed Beavis and Butthead Do America. I recently, and by recently I mean in the last year or two, sat down and watched a couple of Beavis and Butthead episodes, and it's completely lost on me now. I don't even think it's funny anymore, and I couldn't even figure out what I thought was so funny about it the first time. Sometimes you go back and you think, okay, something's not as funny, but the nostalgia of it or the way it struck you at the time still makes you giggle. But it didn't for me, and I thought, I don't know what has changed so much with me, because obviously it's me. The program didn't change any. It was the same program that I watched, but I wondered about that. So when I saw that there was a new movie, I thought, I'll probably pass on that one. But maybe I'll take your advice and watch the 5 minutes, get to that joke, chuckle a bit, and then turn it off.
I'm kind of, it's one of those jokes that I'm ashamed to admit. I had tears running down my face. I couldn't breathe. I mean, I was, and the guy, now again, this is one of those situations where, we're watching with friends. So that made it funnier than it probably really was. But at the same time, they were concerned for me. So I was laughing that hard. And then later afterwards, Mel had a party that night, so she missed out on the majority of it, and then finally joined in late. She was chuckling through the end of it, and sent everybody home and did the thing, And I said, "Okay, I got to show you this thing." And so I booted it back up so that I could show her the joke. She's like, "Wait," I said, "I need 2 minutes. Just let me show you this thing."
Right.
And I start giggling because I know what's coming. And they did the thing, and I went right back into it. And just the same level, the same fit of hysterics, the same, and she's laughing too, but she's also looking at me going, "Dude, are you all right?" And it just, it's like, that's a 5-star joke right there. That's a, like I said, the rest of the movie does not maintain that caliber of it, but it's all right. So,
we also saw Jurassic World Dominion, by the way. So.
Oh, did you like it?
Yeah. So I have felt with every sequel, it's been diminishing returns. I thought Jurassic World was a nice kind of come back up. I think, Jurassic Park is the pinnacle. Then the second movie was okay. The third movie was a fun popcorn flick. Then Park was really good, but then I was so disappointed with Fallen Kingdom that I really worried about this one. This is no epic masterpiece, best movie ever, but it is so much fun. It gave the characters that it brings back from the first film, it gives them more screen time than I expected. I sort of expected more of a kind of like Ghostbusters Afterlife, where we would get them kind of in the last, part of the film, but they really wouldn't have as much to do as they do. And so I was very pleased with that. I really liked it. It really kind of felt like a stamp of closure and a culmination of all of the films. And so I was very, very pleased. And the Barbasol can showed up. So I was immensely happy that even though they didn't use it in any way that I thought they should have used it, at least Dotson had it.
Triggered.
And to bring that character back was insane.
Okay, now I'm gotta move that up on my to watch list.
But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
The Barbasol can triggered me. In a way that
I did a air punch, because that's the one thing I've been bugging my family about. As I said, you can't just leave that. I understand what happened. Spielberg has explained that the focus was on that because they intended to do something with it later, and then when they wrote the second film, it didn't go the way that they originally he envisioned it, so they just discarded it altogether. I understand why. It's just, you can't give me Chekhov's Barbasol can and then not fire it in the final chapter. And at least they didn't fire it, but they showed it to me in the final chapter, so that was I guess, satisfying enough.
I guess I didn't tell you that our family dinner show, we finished Resistance finally.
Oh, what did you think of Resistance?
You know, it gets better as it goes. It is nowhere near. I mean, it is the weakest of the Star Wars shows for sure. It's nowhere near the quality of Clone Wars or Rebels. But it has its own kind of weird charm if you stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just didn't. It shouldn't have been called Resistance. It could have been called. It should have been called Star Wars something else. I don't know what the subtitle should have been, but it should not have been Resistance because it has hardly anything to do with the Resistance.
Yeah, and I mean they kind of sort of get there eventually, but
only barely.
Only barely, and it takes so long to get around to it that it was kind of like, eh. And now that we've seen it, it's kind of like, okay, good, I can check it off the list. I won't go back to that one.
Yeah, I
can see myself rewatching Rebels.
I need to finish it because I watched the first episode, and the first episode was so bad that I was like, I'm not even sure I'm going to finish this series. So,
yeah, like I said, it was a struggle. There were times that we were like, and Kazuda, there are times where he's an okay character, and then there are other times where he's such a monumental klutzy goof. I mean, he's like on Jar Jar Binks level of annoying, and it's like, this is the hero, huh? Okay. I'm gonna grit it and go through with it because we only have 2 seasons of it, so now we can say we've watched it and cross it off. But yeah, so this might be the Jurassic Park might be the replacement show for dinner time.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
All right, well, let's get rolling on our reviews. This time we are reviewing the War Master box set series 6, right? Killing Time.
Yes.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Not at all.
Barely a moment to myself. Have you ordered?
From Big Finish Productions, The War Master, Killing Time.
Perhaps the time has come for you to head back to Gallifrey and admit defeat.
Defeat? The streets boil with panic. They whisper the Empress has gone mad. I'm needed here more than ever.
They think that the Empire is falling. It is not. It will continue. And so will I.
We need to move now. If she's to be overthrown, we need to strike.
No.
No.
It is over. She's won.
Are you giving up?
I just need to go and pick up a few things.
That's not possible. You can't be. You're him. The Master.
In the flesh.
You took everything from me. Now it's my turn to take it from you.
Why have you come back?
You once told me the truths come out when it's most convenient. Well, it's now most convenient. For me. Big Finish. We love stories.
The first story is The Sincerest Form of Flattery, which gets a dun, dun, dun of the highest magnitude.
Oh, really? Wow.
I loved this first story.
Well, go ahead and go first then.
It's simply because we've done so many War Masters in a row, and that we've gotten so used to his MO and how he operates and how he butters people up, and then he, sticks the knife in and twists it around a little bit, or pulls the rug out from under him. Here he's right at it, right out of the gate. And we're going to go and do the thing, and nobody will talk to him. He can't get forms. There's a bureaucracy that's stymieing him, and he sits in wrong chairs, and just on and on and on and on. He just can't seem to get any traction at all. And this Calantha lady is there openly mocking him, and they kind of develop this relationship. And as she begins this meteoric rise through the ranks, and he keeps coming up with these schemes to put into place to install a puppet dictatorship that, of course, he will be behind the scenes pulling the strings of. And she's kind of there doing the legwork and doing it, quote unquote, for reals. And then they finally get to the point where they're having meals together, and they're very pleasant and yet not. I loved the characterization of this. I loved Calantha. I thought she was an amazingly strong, not quite equal, and yet she was, because she kind of managed to counter everything the Master came up with. And it's so rare that we get a story where he's not on top. I mean, obviously, when the Master goes up against the Doctor, he loses. But in all of these stories, the War Master is not up against the Doctor for the majority of them, and so he wins all of the engagements. And we're kind of rooting for him to win the engagements, and so for him to get this boom right out of the box and be on his back foot through the entire story, it was such a delight to hear.
I think I would counter that with, I don't even think he's on his back foot the entire time. It's just they do this beautiful dance of one-upmanship. Each time one gets ahead of the other comes from behind and gets ahead of the other. And it's this back and forth dance between the two that I think is woven very nicely. So I don't even think he's on his back footing the whole time. It's like you said, he's almost met his match in the connivingness that he is able to portray.
Perhaps, yeah, that's a better way.
It's not that he's on his back foot; he's just one step behind the entire time.
There you go. That's better.
Yeah, but I think she's equally one step behind each time too. That's why I think that
they take turns.
Yeah, they kind of take turns. Yeah.
But just the characterizations, the verbal sparring, the as you pointed, the dance, that was just beautiful. And it's rare that you can do just a character development piece. Because normally we have a big space battle, or especially during a time war. Where are the Daleks at? But it's rare that you get that kind of a story, and I just relished it. It was beautifully told. It was wonderfully scripted and performed. Everything about it worked for me. This is the stuff that as an actor, I imagine they were just page turning and going, "Oh yeah," just salivating over these scenes. And then the end, when she plays her trump card and reluctantly, oh so reluctantly, takes over as Empress of the Stagnant Protocol, and his henchman is going on about, well, we'll go and do this, we'll go to that, and he's like, just let her, she's won, just give it up. You have to admire, you have to stand back and give it to her. And it's like, I'm sorry, what? Did I just hear the Master admit defeat? Because again, that's not something, it's totally within his, purview to admit that, but it happens so infrequently for the gentleman in him to go, okay, you got me. But then immediately, until I come back, and so the plan is in motion already. It was just this. Oh, and I immediately. I was cooking dinner as I was listening to it, and then Mel came home, and I was like, okay. So I told her about the thing, and she was enraptured, and it was like, oh, that's it. And I was like, yeah, it was a really good one. So I loved this first story.
I just don't think I could give it as high marks, because while I really enjoyed the interplay between the two characters, I sort of felt like that the story and the setting is sort of underdeveloped because of that, because all we're getting are these little vignettes, and often it's a lot of the stuff that happens is off screen and per se, or between story or between encounters. And so I just kind of felt like I didn't think there was enough around that narrative to set it up as high as you are with it, but I did quite enjoy it, and I think that is because of the interplay between the two players and this just beautiful, majestic dance that they're doing in this one-upmanship back and forth. So yeah, that's where I land on it. I liked it a lot. I just don't know that I think that some of the story and the setting sort of is underdeveloped and kind of felt empty.
And see, I thought that at first, like maybe during the first half of it, I was there with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized it doesn't matter. The stagnant protocol as a whole is kind of the MacGuffin. It could be any kingdom, anywhere. It does not matter. It's not important. What's important is the character development of these two people,
and that's in the name of
how their interplay.
That's in the name of itself, the stagnant protocol. I mean, that says it all.
Yeah.
And that's when I let it go and was just like, yeah, okay, I don't care what's going on with the food shortages.
I just couldn't quite let it go.
I think I landed somewhere in between it, and having finished the box set, I think I like this story probably it's one of the top 2 in the entire box set for me.
Yeah.
It's got the fantastic political machinations that you kind of I honestly feel like Gallifrey has been missing a little bit.
Yeah.
This has granted, this is more of an empire, so it's different, but it's got the political maneuvering and people trying to climb the ladder and politics and backstabbing, all of that sort of stuff that I would have expected from Gallifrey, all in a War Master story. So I was enraptured through most of it and enjoyed the ride throughout pretty much the whole of this first part.
Let me counter that a little bit too, because I think the machinations are good, or not good. They are there in Gallifrey. They're not done well. That's the problem. They're done well in this, and they're not done well in Gallifrey. And if they could be done at this level and this sort of, backstabbing in turns, I think that would make the Gallifrey stories even better.
I think the problem with the Gallifrey stuff is they tried to add too much. They try to have things happen on screen, as it were, more so than they should. Where this one lets those massive events happen off screen and just are talked about and focusing on the political stuff.
Yeah,
they try to add too much action to the Gallifrey.
I can see that.
Yeah. I have to add a caveat there that we are specifically, at least within the confines of this conversation, mentioning the Gallifrey War.
Time
sets.
Yeah,
and Volume 1.
Well, and somebody who has not listened to
one.
any other Gallifrey stuff.
We reviewed Volume 1.
Yeah, the Volume 1. You keep throwing that one at me, and I really don't remember it all, but I'll have to go back and redo it. But the rest of the Gallifrey stuff in between Volume 1 and the Time War may have some of the stuff. I'm certainly hoping it has the stuff, because this is true. You said it. You hit it on the head, Keith. This is exactly what I want out of the Gallifrey set.
And it's a good setup to the box set.
Yeah.
It is a good setup. Don't get me wrong. It's especially a good setup for its bookend piece, which is the last one, and it's a good setup for where the third story takes us, because I know the thread narrative and what is connected to all of this from that. It's the one we're about to talk about that I'm not quite sure where the pieces interlock.
Keith, start us off on A Quiet Night In.
I don't want to. I don't like this one. This one was horrible.
I think the thing is,
this is one of the worst ones I've listened to ever.
I'm hearing this in your voice. I'm hearing this was a good story, but you totally put one of my favorite characters in a corner, and then you cast her out at the end.
Yeah, and you cut her down and took away what gave her agency that she earned in her life.
Yeah.
The whole time when she was under the influence of the Master, I thought she has learned to overpower this. And they gave us a drop line of, some smelling salt or whatever that made it so it would work. But I don't care. You've completely undercut the character and demeaned her and taken away all of her agency. When she left the show, she had a massive amount of agency and continued with that agency.
Not only that, but in doing it with present day Joe.
Right.
And I mean, absolutely no disrespect to the absolutely marvelous performance
She did do a great job.
that
Katie
why
Manning.
am I blanking? Katie Manning, thank you. The absolutely marvelous performance that Katie Manning gave, because she did. She totally sold it, but she maybe sold it too well, because present day Joe felt befuddled and Alzheimer-y, and beyond the normal. I'm being manipulated and confused. I mean, it literally felt like, I mean, it wasn't just a mental game. It felt like she was old.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that was an added stab in the, I don't like this.
And we've had more other present day Joe in Big Finish, and they did not treat her this way. They treated her as a competent character. Treated her like the competent character that she is.
Now, listening to the behind the scenes stuff, or the interview with Jacoby and Katie Manning after the fact, that did take some of the sting out, because they laughed and they carried on, and you know, they commented about, oh, poor Joe, what we did to her, and you know, how evil you were, and you know, how can you be so lovely here and offer me tea and do the evil things that you did in the booth, and you know, so they have a good laugh about it, but at the same time, it doesn't take away from the within the confines of the story. This is, I mean, there's one thing to do it and do it for the shock value of, guess what we're going to do to Joe, and the master gets one over on her. But then there's another thing to do it in such a way that really decimates her. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I felt it was fairly obvious that this haunted house was the master's TARDIS, with the shifting rooms and everything. And I felt like Joe should have cued into that a little bit sooner and didn't have to have that spelled out for her. I didn't like the idea that her entire life may be a lie. That you know, this phantom uncle, if he ever existed, is the one that got her the job at Unit, because now all of a sudden that takes away every bit of agency she ever had.
And I don't think they actually are trying to say that her entire life is a lie, but they've made her think that her entire life is a lie.
Right.
Which,
and I mean, once you crack that door open,
and that's okay. What my problem, I'm going to echo everything you guys said with a caveat. This story I was thoroughly enjoying. It was very intriguing. I was relishing in the confusion that was happening and wondering, where are we going with this? How is this going to resolve? Where are we going with this? How is this going to resolve? All of the little maneuvering and just kind of toying with her and making her very unsure of herself and what was going on. I thought that was really good. It was really compelling. It was something that I hadn't seen done with especially a companion before, of such a beloved companion before. And I was really excited about where this was going to land, and then it doesn't land. It ends up just leaving off with her thoroughly confused, berated, and just completely in doubt of her entire life. And I thought, this isn't a story that you leave that way at the end, unless you're going to revisit it and allow her to regain all of her what's the word? You used it earlier, Keith. But
agency.
Agency. Regain all of your agency. You don't do this in a story unless you're building to something like that, because it is crafted really well. It's very mysterious and intriguing, but to tear her down and leave her tore down, and then not revisit or give her at least a chance to bring that back, that's where it lost me. I was like, okay, now I don't like this because of the way you ended this story.
If this had been the first of a Joe box set,
yeah,
and we could have immediately gone to the next story to see what happens, that would have been one thing. I'd have been more okay with that as being the kickoff for a larger story dealing with the fallout.
Yeah.
But as just a footnote, because that's all she is. It's the War Master's story. And Joe is simply a footnote, and he's just toying with her for the sake of toying with her. And the way in which it's done, because there's this whole rigmarole about these papers. They want you to sign papers. Are they trying to get the house from you? Are they stealing you taking advantage of this old man, everything? And then nothing ever comes of it. Like, I kept expecting maybe he was going to switch that around on her, and that the papers actually were going to be, he was going to have her committed. And that was going to be the takeaway, that she was going to say, no, you can't do it. I'm going to do this. And, I'm going to make sure to sign everything for you so that nothing happens. And that he was going to trick her into committing herself or something. And the confusion. And that would have been but then the paper, the whole thing with that, after bringing them up over and over and over again, there were no papers.
It gets dropped. Yeah.
There's nothing. That was part of the whole, it was like, well, then why did we bother focusing on it for so long?
Right.
Now, the important
and part of that is why I did not enjoy the story, even the ride of it, is it felt like it wasn't going anywhere. It felt like it circled back on itself constantly.
Yeah.
And it felt like absolutely nothing happened especially in the larger the larger look of the entire box set in of itself.
Well, the important part of it for the larger box set is, if the Master in any way is to be believed, the idea that he got her into unit because he wanted her in unit, so that while at some point in time when she was hypnotized, she broke into this vault to get this vial, and that she could deliver it here now.
Oh, that's the that's the one that has the carrying the plague that he ends up bringing back. That's the actual plague.
Right.
Okay. All right.
That's the tie.
I missed that
his
entirely.
mutation of it.
I mean, I remember the whole thing. I knew that she supposedly manipulated her in order to get this vial with this, with what was in it. But I just did not tie that together. That makes sense now.
That's a little wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, even.
Yeah, I don't think it was so much also he got her in the unit. I think he tried to, in the doubting, making her doubt herself, use that lie. But I think in actuality, he just traveled back to that point to hypnotize her and get her to steal the vial while she was working in units.
Right.
Not that he actually got her into units. I think the stuff with her uncle is still all actually happened. He just lied and changed her memories of it.
Right. I agree with that.
That makes that sit a little bit better with me, if I can accept that as headcanon versus the fact that he was actually playing as her uncle all the way back in the old days.
This doesn't feel like something that Big Finish would normally do with a beloved character, which I think is what's quite surprising to me as well. But very much seems like something that you would find in like one of the Doctor Who annuals, or the short story compilations or something. So it was more shocking the fact that Big Finish decided to go this route with something. So,
well, not only that they did it to us twice.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little.
Time at least wasn't quite as.
Let's talk a little bit about the orphan.
Well, Glenn, you start this time.
Well, I thought this is, to me, the weakest as far as story through line. Now, I agree with you guys that I disliked the second story more now, but because of where it went. This one, I felt like the storytelling was poor all the way through because we had just come on the heels of the last story, and we know who the Master is and that he's going to be manipulative. I was constantly throughout this entire story waiting for the other shoe to drop, and for not Sarah Sutton, Nissa, that's the actress's name, waiting for Nissa to just discover it and figure it out. I knew that the Master's manipulations were going to happen. I knew that she was going to be duped, and I knew that she was going to end up becoming the victim, and the uncertainty of it all afterwards. And so, I didn't like that, because coming off the last story, and even he telegraphs it to us at the end of the last story. He says, I wonder what other companion, what other of the Doctor's former companions I can mess with. I'm paraphrasing, but he says it in such a way that you think, okay, well, the next person that he comes across is going to do the same thing. He's going to make them, now, certainly in a different way. It doesn't make Nyssa think she's, well, at points, it's almost, the MO is the same. She does think that she's crazy, but she's more thinks she made mistakes, not necessarily that she's doubting her own mind like Joe is. Yeah. But so for this one, the start off of the story is, okay, I was so let down by the other one, I'm expecting the same thing out of this one, and it doesn't disappoint from that piece, from that point of view. To me, again, the connection of what we were doing here was to the overall story arc was a lot more obvious to me in this one. So I just felt like, okay, we're going through the motions until he ends up getting what he needs for this one, and then we're going to move on to the last story, which will probably be full circle for the first story. So that's where I landed on this one. I didn't like it, because I didn't like it from the beginning, because they had already telegraphed to me that it was going to be the Master manipulating yet another companion that I love.
Yeah, very, very, very similar thoughts. Coming off of the very raw ending to the Joe story and going into Nyssa, who is, I mean, I want to give them props for tackling two companions who have history with the Master. These are not just random, companion encounters. These are probably the two that have the most impact of history. If you were to do a third, it would have to be Grace, I think. So having what happened to Joe happen, and then to follow that up with Nyssa, and knowing how raw this is going to be. This is the guy that wore your dad's body for a while. And we didn't get a lot of that in the series.
Yeah,
it wasn't touched on, but again, Big Finish being Big Finish, they've kind of reiterated that every now and then, that it's still there, that hurt, that frustration, that anger, that hatred. Oh, there's my dead father up walking around, and it's your fault. I mean, that has to wear on you. So here he is with a whole new disguise, and gaslighting. And I think that's the part of it that just rankles me the most. I mean, it's the Master, so it's expected, but at the same time, again, these are characters that we like, and it's not cool what he does to them. But it's less cool that he does it to them for such really low stakes, it seems like. Because, I mean, yeah, he gets the vial from Joe, and then, yeah, he gets the virus variants from Nyssa with her research. But I mean, it seems like that could have come from anybody. He didn't have to go to these two to do that. So it was more just a lucky strike bonus, which cheapens it in a way. That there wasn't these two were worthy of more than, happenstance. Yeah. I wonder who else I can go get. It should have been part of a master plan. It should have been a grand reveal. Mm-hmm. It should have been you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're going to take the agency away from these wonderful ladies, you could at least do it with a bit more panache.
Yeah.
And so we're robbed of that as well.
And better motivations, This is the War Masters, so I kind of anticipate in the entire box that, it tying into the war. And, I mean, we'll get there for the next story, but from all intents and purposes, it's because he wants to rule this stagnant protocol. And that's the only reason why he's ruined these two women's lives.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that despite the shortcomings of that, I did enjoy the third story more than the second story. Just because the story itself was a little more interesting than Joe's descent into madness.
Mm-hmm.
there was at least more meat to the bones of the storytelling, if you will.
There's a bit stronger of a through line and more of a solid, plots as opposed to misdirection and confusion for an hour until you realize what's really happening.
Yeah, well, it had a beginning and a middle and an end. They may not have been a very good beginning and middle and end, but at least there was some structure to it. But yeah, overall, it was just kind of another placeholder until we get to the end.
Which is called unfinished business.
And this rocket's almost not quite as high as the first one, but it's back up there. In my mind, it kind of redeems the box set overall.
But as good as the final one is, and this is more of a judgment on the entire box set, I feel like I could have just listened to 1 and 4 and not had to mess with the other two.
Agreed.
Yep, agreed.
I mean, it's effective in the fact that we take a break from this and we don't necessarily have this sort of run on, because this one's done a little bit. We get the first third of this story, we get the vignettes again where it's the little back and forth between the two. About a third of the way in, it sort of settles into more of a settled time frame where everything is happening linearly. We're having everything happen, for lack of a better word, on camera instead of behind the scenes. And so it sort of lands into that and makes it different. But I think the one thing I can say for having this book ending a 4-part box set is that it gives you enough time for them to breathe, so it doesn't feel like you've launched right back into the same thing in the following story.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess there's something to be said for that, because I was thinking to myself that realistically we could have just had the Master at the end of the first part go, "Oh, I'll be back," and then show back up in the next story.
Yeah.
And you would know that some time has passed, but not for what. And quite honestly, I don't think you'd have missed much.
No.
you would have known that he went off and regrouped and came back with a plan.
Well, that would have been the behind the scenes stuff that it was happening. Yes.
Yeah. As this story unfolds and you learn more about this new strain of plague and the fact that he has a wonder cure, you'd have gone, "Oh, okay." I mean, so
yeah, there's no need to find out how he got
really
there.
It's superfluous almost, and we don't leave our two companions broken and nearly dead and contagious. Which I'll be curious to see how Big Finish is going to get them out of that. But I guess
they better get them out of that.
Yeah, they better get them out of that. I guess it just it's yet another case of taking pawns off the board for the Time War, although these were pawns that I didn't feel were on the board to begin with.
Right, because it was, if you're taking pieces off the board with Leela and Ace, which both I felt were left without, at least they didn't strip their agency, but they were left without, just discarded, basically, just set aside at the end of the stories. And so that in itself was bad, but then you had to do this with two characters that were completely unnecessarily related to the Time War. I mean, they're only now related because their interaction with the Master, who happens to be the Master at the time that the Time War is going on.
I mean, it's the harsh, but it's the near equivalent of, okay, so now we need to do a box set where we go back and we need to hit Ian and Barbara with a bus so that we can make sure that they're not around for the Time War. It's like, what? No, you don't. I mean, just move on, for Pete's sake. Stop going after beloved companions. But yeah, the second one, while it was more of the same to the first, I felt the final piece, it carried on that through line. It was nice to have some more Calanthra and see how her rule, for all intents and purposes, wasn't any different from her predecessors, which was a little disappointing. I kind of thought maybe that she'd have been different. Not better, per se, but different. But no, she fell into the stagnant part of the stagnant protocol. And the master very, very swiftly and very easily came in and reverted to his normal type and dismantled her, and was back in form, which was kind of pleasing after seeing him, get his, as it were. Even when she had the perception of the upper hand and he's in the jail cell, and we kind of get that illusion back to the beginning. And the first time we met, you were in a cell and you were my guard. And again, some wonderful exchanges. Oh, this is really lovely wallpaper. Oh, I picked it myself. And, months or weeks later, however long it's been later, you've been nibbling at the wallpaper. Yes, I have to confess. and to flip that we've had all these lovely meals together and that she is now starving him to death. It's like, wow, you're cold-blooded. Now, we know, whether through Time Lord physiology or just the master being the master, this isn't going to go anywhere. But still, it was, it was cool to have that. Well, how far are we going to push this? He seems like he's actually kind of teetering.
See,
and then the insult to injury when she's eating in front of him. Oh, it smells wonderful.
I think, though, that Jacoby almost sells it too well for me, because in his performance, and I'm not undermining his performance, because it was beautiful and it was so well done. But unlike the first one, where I felt like the master kept being one-upped, and then he would one-up this was the long game one-up of each other on this one. But I saw this one coming, because he never let his imprisonment get to him, because the master we've known in other incarnations becomes very impatient and very worked up when he is basically when he's imprisoned. He becomes very impatient and erratic, and he wasn't in this. And so I thought, okay, well, you can maybe lend that to the fact that he's a different incarnation, but because he was being very cordial and sweet and not at all vindictive in his tone, I knew he was up to something. I knew something was coming. So all along, I keep thinking he's not on his back foot anymore, or he's not being one-upped anymore. He's the one that's one-upping somebody, and I've just got to wait for it. So
yeah, that was very much felt like it was the impression through it all. And I feel like they missed it. I feel like they missed a joke. I would have really liked for him to have asked for what is the British Teletubbies show that he was watching in CD.
I don't remember what it was.
I feel like he should have asked for, is that program on here?
The Warbles or something like that?
The Warbles or something. I feel like that would have been an absolutely stunning joke.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a bridge too far. But at any rate, we've got this beautiful setup, and this, like you said, he's you know the master, especially in the fourth part of the box set. He's not really on his back foot. He's just waiting. He's just biding his time until the table flip comes, and then it comes, and the Daleks show up. And I could have actually used a little more with the emissary bit.
Yeah, that was
curious how that worked.
That's the weakest part of this. Is it felt like the emissary was a necessity in order to have a intermediary between the Daleks and the protocol, but the problem is, now I wanted to know more about this person. Is this one of these ones that has the Dalek stock in its head that reveals itself later, like we did in Asylum of the Daleks? Or is this woman got, a big robo man head implant thing on the sides of her head? Or, so I'm wondering more about this woman. She's not obviously not doing it out of sheer goodwill, and they certainly didn't hire her. So I'm just wanting to know more about this woman. And I think that's where this falls down, is we've created this character in order to be this intermediary, and I'm sitting here wanting to know more about why she is who she is.
My head canon is totally that she's got the head canon, that she's got the thing with the eye stock.
Freudian slip there. My head canon is that she has the head canon.
That's how I rationalized it, because I had the same thought. It was like, so is she one of these people or one of those people? Well, it's too late for one of the, because the Robomen, surely they've evolved that design by now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's what became the ones that when they're have the dialect eye stalk that comes out of the top of their head.
They're new Robomen, but it's spelled NU.
No one spells it that way.
But yeah, I could have used a little more with her, but she was a necessary function for, because we had to have basically a counterpart to the Master and the role that he was, playing in the first one. But so when we finally get up to it, and then we have this beautiful, the Empress in exile, and she's fleeing, and now I've given you a head start. And oh, by the way, the Daleks are waiting for you out there. Oh, and by the way, your ship's infected with plague. Oh, and by the way, I mean, it was just like one after another. It was like, damn, you were pissed.
Well, it was a bit poetic, and I'm not going to remember exactly how this was said, but earlier in that first box set, he told her that she would be running to escape. He would be in power, and she'd be running to escape. And that ends up what happens. And in fact, so much so that it gets to the point where he gives her the chance to escape, and she stands her ground. And I thought, oh, you should have taken that opportunity when you did. However, it was a moot point because he had already had the plan set up that she was going to end up, meeting with the Daleks and already have the plague on that ship. So it wouldn't have mattered whether she left then or she stood her ground and left again later. So.
Yeah, by this point, he's got his finger on the pulse that is Calantha.
Yes.
He has figured her out.
Yes.
So, and that's what made the puzzle piece work for me, was that, okay, it doesn't matter. He's back on top. He's back in form, and you may have given me a temporary setback, and I'll applaud you for it, but no more.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, do you like the wallpaper? It's like, ah. So I quite enjoyed the bookending pieces of this one, but for as much as I enjoyed the bookending pieces of this one, I did not like the middle. The middle parts of the sandwich were no good. Bread was awesome.
Overall, I'm enjoying the War Master stories, but for the most part, I sort of feel like the majority of them, and I don't think I'd do it any different, but hindsight, the majority of them are so unrelated to the Time War that if you're just sitting down to do Time War stories, I don't think a lot of these War Master stories are even necessary.
This one especially.
Yeah, there's some that connect, but there's just some that doesn't make a difference whatsoever. I think even the last one we reviewed was the same way. So, but
well, and
again,
honestly, I also feel like you do yourself a little bit of a disservice, because I feel like Jacoby is such an amazing performer that it would be one of those. It would be like a wonderful dessert that you get to pull out and have. And, I'm going to treat myself to some War Master.
Yeah.
And you get to listen to periodically versus mowing through the entire catalog
Agreed.
as we're doing.
Agreed.
So I think that is something else that is kind of an unfortunate side effect of how we're doing it, is just that, I don't want to give the impression that I'm bored of him by any stretch, but it's just not, yeah.
But we're approaching these stories in the context of the Time War, and when it doesn't tie into it, it kind of makes it feel like, considering the title of the box set, we're killing some time here with this story.
Very on point on this one.
Do you collect Doctor Who? Do you have Doctor Who items and you don't know you collect Doctor Who? For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world, tune in to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. I am Larry Van Rosbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. With popular features like collection protection and the most outrageous offer, we have a lot of fun. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point Network podcast.
Well, coming up next on the schedule is some new War Master that we only realized kind of slots in where it does. So we've had to adjust things slightly. The War Master Self-Defense, which is box set 7.
And just released last month.
Just released last month. So this is hot off the press, as it were. But it would slot in between 6 and then the rest of the War Master 1, which we had planned on doing next. So we will go ahead and do Self-Defense next time, and then go and do the rest of the War Master 1, which is the 2, 3, and 4, only the good box set there.
Yep.
And then Redacted. Dun, dun, dun. Because in theory, that will finish off Act 1 of the Time War.
Yeah. We'll actually take a break from the Time War to do Doctor Who Redacted. Get that one in before Jodie's season concludes in presumably October. I'm not sure it's official October, but that's what everybody's saying now. So
Halloween Saturday.
Be sure to check out our website, travelingthevortex.com, for any updates on this podcast. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by clicking on our Patreon link and consider supporting us. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to this podcast, and make sure you join in the conversations in our listeners forum on Facebook. Anything else that we need to touch on before we close this recording?
I don't believe so.
All right. If not, then until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing ya.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.